Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth and final session of New Hampshire Next, a summit for young changemakers. If we haven't met yet, my name is Will Stewart, and I am the Executive Director of Stay, Work, Play New Hampshire, a statewide nonprofit whose mission is to attract and retain more young people here in the Granite State. We have a great program to conclude our series today, and look forward to getting started to that in just a moment. But before we do, I'd like to take a brief moment, bring the energy down just a little bit, and ask everyone to please turn off their cameras so that we can have a moment of silence to remember Dante Wright and Adam Toledo, and to honor these victims of injustice and police brutality. Thank you, everyone. So our primary goal for New Hampshire Next is to inspire young New Hampshire changemakers to create positive change in their communities and across the state. Today's theme is continuing the change, and I think it's a fitting conclusion to this incredible and inspiring week that we've had, hearing from and learning from young changemakers all across New Hampshire. And before we get started, I'd like to invite everyone to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who you are and where you're logging in from today. It's one of the main benefits of events like this is the opportunity to meet people who share similar interests and passions. And while we wish we could do that in person, and we hope we can get back to that very, very soon, it is great that we have the option to connect virtually. So please, if you're comfortable doing so, please introduce yourself down in the chat. Would also like to ask that before we get started, if we could have your indulgence for just a moment. In this case, we'd like to ask everyone to turn on your cameras, if you wouldn't mind, so that we could take a quick screenshot of everyone who's joining us here today. And if you want to turn on your cameras, give us a nice big smile. My colleague Beth Sansusi will count us down.
All right, folks. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you, Will.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. So now what we're here for, New Hampshire Next. So in just a minute, we're going to hear from some of Stay Work Play's past Rising Stars Awards recipients. And if you're unfamiliar with the Rising Stars Awards, they are Stay Work Play's signature annual awards that recognize the incredible young people here in the Granite State who go above and beyond to make New Hampshire a better place. And today, some of those guests, our guests here, are to remind us kind of what they were up to when they won their awards, and give us some updates on what's been happening to them and in their lives and in their work in the interim, and what they're doing these days too. And after we hear from all of our speakers, we'll have time for a live Q&A and discussion. So I would encourage you, if you have questions for any of our presenters today, throw them down in the chat as you think of them, or feel free to hold on to them toward the end, and we'll get to as many of them as we can this afternoon. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic off to our first presenter, Christa Lewis.
Hello, nice to be here with you all. I apologize that my camera is not on, had some difficulties this morning, but so happy to be here. I was the recipient of Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2018. And to give you a little bit of a backstory about me, I grew up in the beauty industry. My family owned the largest beauty supply distributor on the East Coast, which got acquired by L'Oreal. And my way of quote unquote rebelling growing up was doing makeup, until unfortunately, when I was in college, I found out that my chronic migraines and nausea were due to my cosmetics. So right after I graduated from SNU, I decided to start a makeup line that would be both natural and high performance. And we continued to scale from there. Around 2018, when I won the award, we were in retail. And since then, we pivoted to be a direct-to-consumer brand only, which was very helpful over what's gone on the past year and a half. And in the meantime, this community, this ecosystem has been so helpful in helping us leverage our brand and utilize what New Hampshire has for assets. And since then, we were the Tech Out winner for 2019. We've expanded our team. We've launched new products. We've appeared in Forbes. And it's just been a really exciting time, and I owe a lot of it to this program. So thank you. And again, so happy to be here. But I would love to pass it off to Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, Stay Work Play and Sarah for helping organize this. And it's just an honor to be here with fellow changemakers. So a little bit about me. I was the 2014 Civic Leader of the Year. And in 2006, I started a nonprofit called the Faith, Hope, and Love Foundation. And it was inspired by my students at Laconia High School. And I wanted them to have faith, hope, and love and a better future, no matter what their circumstances or social economic status was. So through that, we do college scholarships. We do grants for survival and enrichment needs, and we do a lot of speaking and advocating for some of our lower income students throughout the state. I'm also pretty passionate about ending human trafficking and helping causes that relate to empowering women. So I've served on numerous boards such as New Beginnings Domestic Violence Shelter, Habitat for Humanity, the Circle Girl program, Girls on the Run. I love planning charity events. So I've co-founded Dancing with the Stars, you know, kind of like taking it from the TV show. And with me and my friend Ashley, we've raised over $115,000 for local charities in the Lakes region. Since the Civic Leader of the Year Award, I have founded the Lakes Region Socktober event, which is a month-long project in October where we collect socks for local agencies that deal and help with our neighbors suffering from homelessness. I also do some fundraisers advocating for breeds of animals that are discriminated against, such as pit bulls and Dalmatians. I put on fashion shows to help raise awareness about human trafficking throughout our state. Recently, I founded the Spirit of Hope and Kindness Awards, which is really awesome and fun because what we do is we spotlight elementary, middle, and high school students that are doing good and being kind. And it's like an award show, and every single student that gets nominated or honored at our awards get a $500 grant, and then they do kindness projects with it. I'm also a member of Remedial Herstory, which is a brand new nonprofit that brings women's history into local elementary, middle, and high schools. I also have the honor of volunteering with Honor Flight New England, which takes our World War I, World War II, Korean and Vietnam War vets and our heroes to Washington, D.C. for the day. And then at work, I sponsor or I try to get my students involved in community service. So all of my freshmen, I find them a place in the community to do service that aligns with their passion. And it can do with anything, like, you know, if you like mountain biking, then I'll, you know, connect you with a mountain biking organization. And I do that. And I also run the Interact Service Club, which has to do with international understanding. So that's kind of a quick synopsis, but again, an honor to be here. And thank you for having me.
And I think I'm after you, Laura, right? Awesome. How do I follow that? Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate the invite to be a part of this Will and Stay Work Play team. My name's Scott Crowder. I received the Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award back in 2017. At that time, I was wearing a few different hats across a couple different companies that I was involved with. I was operating a seasonal activity center, a recreation business, which I co-founded with my wife, called the ECAL Activity Center in Meredith. It's an outdoor rec shop, renting canoes, kayaks, stand-up paddle boards, and offering boat rides and charters on Lake Winnipesaukee. We ultimately sold that business in 2019 to Mill Falls at the Lake. At the time of the award, I was also working on a sports tech startup called Box Score. We were working out of the Alpha Loft down in Manchester. My co-founder and I went through a lot of the different startup programming support here in New Hampshire. We did the Accelerate NH program, got to know a lot of great people doing great things here. We ended up partnering with Wasabi Ventures, but ultimately we were not able to materialize the business, not for any lack of support from New Hampshire, just because there were some flaws in what we were trying to do, and we shut that business down in 2018. Another hat that I was wearing and still do wear at the time of the award was I was operating the ECAL company, which is a boutique event management and consulting agency. In 2017, we were hosting events, our Pond Hockey Classic events are kind of our flagship events. We were hosting events in New Hampshire, Vermont, Montana, and New York City. Since then, we've kind of reduced the number of Pond Hockey Classic events we do. We do our events in New Hampshire and Vermont. Those are events that we own and manage soup to nuts. but we've been putting more resources and having honestly a little bit more fun doing the consulting side. So we've been able to put a little bit more focus in that area of the business and started to run and manage and conceptualize and execute events for some of our partners, some of them like Barstool Sports, Red Bull. So pretty fun working with groups like that to host events. Over the course of my professional career, I've definitely existed kind of at the intersection of sports and tourism. I've been on the Lakes Region Tourism Board since 2012, I believe, or 2011. I've also held various roles with a nonprofit called Restore Sports, which is a youth sports equipment nonprofit group as well. After selling the activity center, I was looking for a challenge, and it's kind of always been on my list of things I wanted to accomplish. So I've started to pursue my MBA about halfway through the program at the Eisenberg School down at UMass Amherst. And more recently, and one thing that I'm very excited about is I was recently named the director of the Office of Outdoor Industry Development, Outdoor Recreation Industry Development here at the state of New Hampshire. So my role in this position is to further the development of the outdoor recreation industry and the economy that exists here in New Hampshire for the overall benefit of the state. So there's a lot of great things that I'm going to get to dive into head first in this role. So that's me in a nutshell, and I think I'm passing it off to Alicia.
Hi, thanks, Scott. So great to see everybody. So my name is Alicia Hannigan. At the time when I won the award, my life was very different, I feel. It was 6 years ago, but on one hand, it feels like a lifetime ago. And on the other hand, it seems like not that long ago. It was 2015. It was College Student of the Year. I was a junior at SNHU. I was extremely involved on campus academically. I was a teaching assistant. I was, involved in undergraduate research, was on multiple advisory boards, for the school in terms of just extracurricular clubs, but also really heavily involved in service, leading service trips to Ireland, involved in some to Nicaragua, as well as just a lot locally as well. Something I was just really passionate about. Since then, I graduated from SNHU in 2016 with a dual degree in psychology and child development. And I went to BU Medical School for a master's degree in mental health counseling and behavioral medicine. I was, at that point in my life, was definitely, I remember feeling very torn because I love the program, like the medical and neuroscience piece of mental health, I think is really important to be kind of on the cusp of, because we're learning so much more about that. But so I wanted to go there, but I didn't want to leave New Hampshire. I really wanted to stay because this is where my family and my friends were. So I commuted to Boston every day, and a lot of my classes were at 7:30 or 8 in the morning. So I took the Boston Express bus down at like 3 a.m. every day, and was up doing homework until 11, and then was up at 3 a.m. So that was a very long 2 years, but I ended up graduating in 2018. And then after 2 more years of clinical work, I ended up getting licensed with the state of New Hampshire. So I hold an LCMHC license. So I'm a professional therapist now. I work at CREATE in Manchester, which is the Center for Expressive Arts and Therapy and Education. So I'm really passionate about doing art-based work and play-based work, especially with kids, but adults too. And in addition to working there, it's a private practice, so I see clients. I'm also a professor at SNHU in the psychology department. I teach a variety of classes, and I'm a professional consultant for a company called Rhythm. They're actually out of Texas, but I do scripts for them. So they create psychoeducational and like relaxation scripts that are played in like school districts. So I write and kind of do some of their editing. And I think the biggest thing right now is, now that I have my own professional license, my husband, who is also in the field, the two of us are in the process of creating our own small business. So it's really exciting to hear all of you talk about starting your business. I feel like I'm in that club now. We're in the process of creating our own private practice, Hannigan Counseling Center, PLLC. We're working on getting insurance panels, but we have our like tax ID and all those fun nitty gritty details. With that, I think I want to keep doing what I've always been doing. I really want to give back to the state. I want to hold a lot of, psychoeducational support groups. I want to be really involved in Clinicians United. It's a group that does a lot with like the systemic policy work in terms of like mental health. So I would really love to just be involved with that, you know, work with people, but then hopefully bring larger systemic change at the policy level. So yeah, that's me, and I'm passing it off to George.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I'm George Hansel. I was, I think, the 2017 citizen, what is it? Community citizen, civic leader of the year. And since then, I was a city councilor at that time. I was elected the mayor of Keene. Started out my mayor's term in 2020, so I had about 3 months of normalcy before coronavirus hit. And that has been pretty all-encompassing. We've really worked hard to keep the community safe. We have some great community partners here in Keene with Keene State College and the Cheshire Medical Center. So that's been a lot of it. But under the surface of all that, there have been some really great things sort of percolating. We've worked really hard on the housing situation. I'm sure many of you can relate to the housing shortage that we're facing here in New Hampshire. We've put together a really innovative program called 21 and 21, which is a program to weatherize and fix up 21 homes in Keene in 2021. It leverages a lot of different funding sources. It'll basically put over $1 million of renovation dollars into the community in this year. So that's great. And it's a really innovative program, and it's fixing up houses, fixing up blocks in Keene, section by section. So really excited about that. We're pretty land poor here in Keene. We're pretty well built out. So we really have to look at our existing housing stock for ways to expand housing opportunity for people here in Keene. I'm also a member of the University System Board of Trustees, and there's a lot that's been going on in higher education lately. That's been a really interesting challenge, and understanding how the community college system of New Hampshire functions in relation to the university system and what the future of higher ed is and the demographic shift. So it's just been kind of a, I wouldn't say like a crisis, but there's been a lot of change in a lot of different fronts over the last year. And so I feel like I'm in an interesting position where I get to sort of play a part in a lot of that. And so that's been really, really fun. I'm also heavily involved in economic development activity in Southwest New Hampshire. I'm the board chair for one of 10 regional development corporations, the one here being Monadnock Economic Development Corp. And we're working on a bunch of different projects. We just completed a library expansion that made Keene's library the largest in the state, I believe. And we have a small industrial park that we're looking to put together, which is called the Keene Technology and Innovation Partnership, which is an amazing idea to bring together higher education, business supports, so lending capacity with some tech businesses here in the Southwest part of the state. And so we're really excited about that. We're doing the funding stack for that project. It should end up being an $18 to $24 million industrial park. So that's taken up a lot of my time, and I am going to hand it off to Haley.
Callie. Hi, guys. My name's Callie McPherson. Thank you, George. I'm the 2018 Young Professional of the Year, now called Young Person of the Year. Love the name change. So I'm a program manager in the defense industry with a background in mechanical engineering. I went to UNH, got both a bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering. So my big thing is I am also one of your local NASA solar system ambassadors, which means that's part of the official NASA volunteer program, which is why I'm connected with Stay Work Play, because I put on a lot of presentations, talks, exhibits, booths, what have you, to try and promote STEM in students in the state of New Hampshire, specifically young women, but just STEM and students in general. COVID hit me a little harder this year because most of my events are normally in person. So almost every single event I had got canceled in some way. Some were moved to virtual, which was awesome. But yeah, I put on events such as Yuri's Night, which promotes spaceflight, I am part of the New England Fall Astronomy Festival. I'm part of the planning board for the New Hampshire Maker and Food Fest at the Children's Museum of New Hampshire. So you'll see me generally around the state in places with, you know, NASA swag on, handing out stickers and trying to promote, you know, the latest science and technology to our local communities, which I absolutely love. So while I'm on here, if anybody needs something like that, feel free to reach out. I always love, you know, to join new events. And yeah, that pretty much sums it up for me. You know, thanks again to Stay Work Play for having me here. This was absolutely one of the favorite awards that I've ever been given because, you know, I'm born and bred in New Hampshire and I plan on staying here for the rest of my life. I've lived in other states and I always came back to New Hampshire. So, and I believe I'm passing it off to Arnold.
Hi all, how you doing? My name is Arnold Nicolo, and I was the 2016 Civic Leader of the Year. It does feel that long ago, but it's actually very recent. Back then, I was just reflecting on what I was doing back then, and it's no different from what I'm doing now, but it's just in a different capacity. I remember in 2016, I was a co-chair of the Welcoming Manchester initiative, which is an initiative to make Manchester a more welcoming city. I was the co-chair of the Economic Development and Employment Goal Group, and we worked with Chamber of Commerce and employers to make sure that the barrier of people of color accessing opportunity is no longer, but also upward mobility opportunities. So when an organization is trying to diversify their employees, it's not just the receptionist and people are cleaning up the floor, who are people of color, rather up and down the organization chart. So if the board has people of color and the executive committees and members have people of color, that's true definition of diversity. I think at the time I was also sitting on the board, on the advisory board of the YMCA, which I was for many years until recently. I just resigned because of other opportunity that presented themselves, but also to give younger people to also take the position to also make an impact, but also to sit at the table where decision making are being made. And I was also a fellow on the LRC, which is the Legal Referral Center. And my primary passion then, and I think what actually made me sit on the board then, was to advocate for housing discrimination. You know, and was also a outgoing, has a pretending as if I'm looking for a house to just see if the landlord will give me an opportunity, and then a white person will come in and pretend as if they're looking at a house. And that was just, so that's something they do, and that was part of what I was doing then. So now since in 2018, I started my own company, Excel Connect LLC, which is a language service company. We are recently changing it to Lugha Translation Service. Lugha, it's a word in Swahili, which means language. So I'm also an environmental justice advocate with CLF, which is the Conservation Law Foundation. And my work is to help improving quality of life in low and low income neighborhood, but also to provide tools to help communities to be self-sufficient, but also to advocate for themselves. Some of the issues we're currently working on is neighborhood highways, which focuses on eliminating double-lane streets and also adding bike lanes and sidewalk. And in more affluent neighborhoods, they already have that. So my work really is to help communities of color, but also low-income communities to self-advocate for themselves and to be championed for these issues, but also to build an environmental justice community in general. In the same capacity, I'm also a co-chair with Chris Kelly, whom I see earlier here today, in the environmental climate justice with the NAACP, and just got nominated to be the first vice president of the NAACP, the Manchester local branch as well. So that's what I'm up to now, and I'm actually joining the board of NeighborWorks, which Will Stewart used to be part of many years ago. And last but not least, I'm also the chair of the Mayor's Multicultural Advisory Council here in Manchester. I'm sure you probably heard. It's a council that was created a few months ago, I would say about a year or so ago. And it's the same capacity as Welcoming Manchester, which is to make Manchester a more welcoming city, but also to attract and retain young people of color in the city of Manchester that can come here to stay, to work, and play, which aligns with the mission of Stay, Work, Play. One thing I'm very proud of, and hopefully it'll be safe enough this summer to do, is that I proposed a multicultural week, which will happen at the end of the month of August. We used to have a We Are One festival, which used to be a one-day festival an entire year. So you had to wait one day to basically see everyone you haven't seen in 12 months. And I thought that wasn't right. So I proposed that we have a whole week. So we could actually have a whole week of just going there and having fun. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's still up in the air. We can still do it outdoors safely, but also it could be something that'll be reported. But I'm very proud that, the mayor was agreed to do that. And it has yet to be official, but I'm just giving you an inside scoop. So just between you and me. Yeah, so, the other question I was asked is, what do I love about staying, working, or playing in New Hampshire? And it's very simple. I love the fact that New Hampshire is such a small, big state. We have 4 seasons. I know winter is not the most favorite, especially for a guy like me who was born and raised in Congo, where it's warm from January to December. And but once you started enjoying certain activities during the winter time, you kind of start enjoying New Hampshire and just realize that there's something beautiful in each and every one season. Also, the property tax may be higher, but we could still find a decent place to live for less. And also, they're getting more and more opportunity of people of color like myself, and also to build your network in New Hampshire. So I think that, once you start building that network and getting opportunity, it helps you establish your roots, in a place. And I know they still have a lot of work to do, but I think that New Hampshire is definitely moving toward in the right direction. And the last question is there anything I should know, people should know, or might be relative to work that I'm doing as a young change maker? And I always say 3 words: it's advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. I feel like, I have a calling, and that's to be an advocate. And I do believe that young people have the power to shape the future of our community. I strongly believe that, and I honestly believe that. And, not just our state, but also our country. So, if there is a small, portion that I can do to make sure that, that's happening, we're empowering the next generation of young people to make that change, I think that'll be great. Some of the things that I'm very passionate about as far as advocacy, it's housing, social justice, transportation, food security, environmental, climate, but also energy and equity, justice. So these are some of the things that really keeps me up sometime at night when I'm thinking about what could be done about them, or what could be my part in making sure that we are bringing on that change in New Hampshire. Yeah, so that's kind of the bigger picture. And with that, I'll pass to Emmett Soldati. I hope I didn't butcher your name. I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, that's good. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Emmett Soldati. I'm here in Somersworth, New Hampshire. I was the 2019 Young Entrepreneur of the Year. I think it was because I have a cafe called Teetotaler, which at the time was a cafe, bakery, and venue that couldn't help but get a little bit political at times, and really building a business that led with its social values. And circa April of 2020, we were planning on opening our second location in Concord for all of you in the capital region. But something happened in March that prevented that from happening and closed our business down on March 15th. And very quickly, our business pivoted. We established a paid sick leave program for restaurant workers. And I really saw an opportunity to connect with a lot of other restaurant owners, which is something I never had any time to do when I was running a restaurant, and spent the early part of the pandemic really looking at ways to help and support other Main Street business owners, independent, small business owners anywhere in New Hampshire or Southern Maine to kind of pivot and adapt. And then ultimately, with all that free time, decided to run for political office. And so actually spent my entire pandemic running for statewide office and losing, which was wonderful. And I would recommend everyone try it at least once. I tried it twice during COVID. But as far as my business went, it was a time when we saw like Grubhub and DoorDash like really milking everything they could out of small restaurant owners that were struggling, charging $15 delivery fees. So we decided, although we closed the business, the physical space that I'm sitting in for the entire year, we set up our own delivery service, our own platform, our own delivery model. We called it Doorstep Boba. So we're bringing, Thai bubble tea to your door. And it started with 3 communities, kind of just a way of keeping people engaged and happy. And we scaled. We are now, in part thanks to Angie Lane of Red River Theaters, delivering to over 15 cities and towns in New Hampshire and Maine, and looking to scale more. So if there's other people that are feeling entrepreneurial and entering the food delivery space interests you, shoot me a little DM. But otherwise, looking forward to reopen and also help other businesses that I've met throughout the year make New Hampshire even more vibrant and exciting in the years to come. And with that, Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Emmett. My name is Chris Wellington. I was the 2014 Young Professional of the Year. At the time, I was the Executive Director of the Grafton Regional Development Corporation, which was a nonprofit economic development organization that covered Grafton County. Since then, I've kind of moved on, and now I'm in the affordable housing arena. I work for a nonprofit called Families in Transition. We recently changed our name. We were Families in Transition New Horizons because we merged with New Horizons, which is a adult emergency shelter here in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's the largest homeless shelter in New Hampshire, might even be in New England, other than Boston, of course. So I'm the Vice President of Housing Development and Operations. So I oversee all our new development, all our buildings. We have about 24 buildings, 24 housing facilities in the state. We're mostly concentrated in Manchester, but we do operate in Dover, Wolfboro, and Concord as well. So it's nice to hear everybody or most of the people reference affordable housing. I think we know that that's a huge issue. It's everything from the clients that we serve, which are usually the poorest of the poor, the really vulnerable populations that are suffering from substance use issues or mental health issues, but everything up to, multifamily and, single family homes, which we really need, especially for our young professionals and recruitment. So it's kind of nice to hear that. Back in 2014, my life was a little bit different. So I had a lot more time to give to the community. So I still try to as I can, although I just say that because of the work that I do, I'm just doing it for the community, definitely not for the paycheck. So it's a volunteer service as it is here for anybody who works in nonprofit knows that. I do serve on the city's planning board, which is nice. So I always give a plug when I'm at a great opportunity like this with younger people. A lot of people that are in serving on boards, whether it's planning board, zoning board, others usually are a little older than me, but the same sex as me and the same color as me. And so it would be nice to get some more diversity on the board, especially younger people and different diversity as well, which we need in the state desperately. So contact your city clerk's office. There's always opening. With Mayor Keene here, I'm sure he can attest to that as well over in Western New Hampshire there. So I appreciate, Stay Work Play. It was great to work. It was great to, win the award. I was really surprised. There were so many great, candidates there that I felt were more deserving, but it was very nice to have that. So now it sits on myself and my daughter looks at it, in amazement, not knowing what it is. So with that, I will actually turn it over to Sarah Reitzman, who I've had personal experience with her work on Plan New Hampshire, who's very involved in the community. So it was nice to see her, and then I get to introduce you.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Stay Work Play, and thanks all of you for being here. My name's Sarah Reitzman. I am the 2018 Civic Leader of the Year. At the time, I was the Executive Director of the Workforce Housing Coalition of the Greater Seacoast, but I was relatively new to the housing world then. I had recently graduated with my master's degree in public policy. I am still the Executive Director of the Workforce Housing Coalition of the Greater Seacoast, but a lot has happened in that time. I'm obviously not so new to this housing world, and I've learned a lot and gotten to meet a lot of people, not just my sort of housing partners and collaborators like Stay Work Play and other organizations, but also just tons of awesome people like you who have great housing stories and are awesome advocates and can tell your housing stories and really make an impact that way. So I work across the Seacoast region, the Greater Seacoast region of New Hampshire, advancing diverse housing options. I'm now also the housing coordinator for the Regional Economic Development Center. So I'm wearing those two hats and doing very similar work. And since I won the Civic Leader of the Year award in 2018, I have also gone on to co-host and co-found and now co-chair what started as a podcast, but is now a brand new nonprofit, Creative Guts. We're on a mission to awaken creativity within people of all ages by curating an environment for connection, collaboration, and the opportunity for gutsy creatives to share their stories with the world. It's a very different hat that I wear than my housing hat. And we have at least one person who's already, Will's been on the podcast before and Emmett's been on the podcast before. So we have a couple past guests and maybe hopefully some future guests too who are here today. I still write about housing for Stay Work Play, so I'm still very much involved in Stay Work Play, and I've done a whole bunch of other things too, including I graduated from Leadership Seacoast. I'm currently wrapping up Leadership New Hampshire. I was named 40 under 40 by the union leader, and I've done some work that Chris alluded to with Plan New Hampshire, where I get to do some charrettes and some fun things and being out in the community with them. Similarly, I am also a New Hampshire native. I've lived here my entire life. I have no plans to leave. So this was really of all of the awards that I've won, my favorite one, and Stay Work Play has been a great organization to work with. So certainly means a lot to be here and get to talk to all of you. And I am going to turn it back over to Will now.
Okay, I think I speak for everyone here when I say that I think we all have a new, or at least a deeper inferiority complex after hearing from all of you and everything that you've been up to these recent years. And seriously though, super impressive, and I don't know how you all do it. And I want to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, but first, I want to hone in on a couple of things that, something you mentioned, Scott, and Emmett, you too, which were setbacks that you've faced. And I think, like on social media, we all, share kind of the best versions of ourselves, right? And it's all success and, great photos where we get the right side of our face and good hair days and all this. But Scott, you mentioned, that one of your businesses is no longer in existence. Didn't quite work out. Emmett, you mentioned, you've mentioned losing 2 political contests. I'm wondering if the two of you and others who might like to chime in can talk a little bit about setbacks that you faced and what you've learned and how you've rebounded and kind of kept on with the impressive feats that you've been tackling.
I don't know if you want to take that, Emmett, or you want me to jump in here first, but you're happy to do either. Yeah, well, I think it'd be foolish for anybody to think that they're not going to fail at what they set out to do at a time or two in their life. So I think it's all those cliches that you kind of hear. It's like, if I start a sports tech startup and it doesn't go well and I don't raise funding or I don't aren't able to materialize a product to a way to generate a customer base and make it impactful, I mean, they're going to feel sorry for myself and not try to do anything else going forward. I don't think that would be very, very productive. So I think the other side of the equation is I learned a hell of a lot. Obviously spent a lot of time, pursuing and blood, sweat, and tears to try to build something that I was passionate about. And it's definitely a little bit of a shot in the gut when you ultimately have to pull the plug on it. But looking back, and I mean, I met some amazing people and learned a lot, and got to see some other amazing people here within the state working out of the Alpha Loft and taking advantage of some of those resources. Go through similar challenges, and some of them are still plugging on the same companies. So I think it's just all part of the process, and you can't get too high, can't get too low on all of the aspects of life. But yeah, I'm glad I failed, because I don't think that'd be a very fun business to run. And I learned a lot, and I'm doing things that I think I'm a little bit more suited for and a little bit more passionate about. So.
Yeah, I definitely feel similar. Will, you described it as losing as a setback. People think I had sort of an optimism complex, because when I lost, it was like one of the most wonderful experiences, because I think the story we tell about politics is that it is all brinksmanship, like there's a winner and a loser, and nobody really tells you about what are all the connections in the community and the energy that you've created in the process of a campaign. And so if I had gotten elected to either office, I would now have a full-time job and I couldn't do anything else. And so I think in a lot of ways, learning what the value actually is in doing it myself means I'm so much more adapted and ready for like future stuff. And I feel the same way about my business. I think COVID, particularly for restaurants, brought a lot of truth telling about how the industry is on a very thin thread. If I had closed my business because of, not a good profit margin or challenge hiring staff in February of 2020, I would be deemed as a failure. I have a bad business model. If I had closed my business in March of 2020, I was a hero, I was smart, I was savvy. And so I think a lot of it is we don't really tell the truth about what the reality for business owners or shop owners, or what it means to run an organization, that when people do make these decisions like closing or selling or packing up, that it oftentimes is a smart decision. It oftentimes is an important one. It's a necessary one. And so for me, yeah, I don't feel like I was set back. If anything, I feel like I was freed in a big way, with an abundance of connections that are now not just in Somersworth, but across the state.
I think that's a great way to to frame it, and I think you're absolutely right. I'm curious if any of our other presenters and past award winners have had similar experiences where things might not have worked out as initially planned or what you were aiming for, but perhaps because of that have opened up new opportunities for you that might not have otherwise been available.
I lost my first election a long time ago. I ran for the state house, and I am so glad that I lost that election, because it really, like you said, it opened up a new opportunity. I looked into volunteering on the Conservation Commission locally as a result of that. And here we are 10 years later, and I really found my passion, which is in the local government and that sort of thing, and staying away from the partisan politics. So it was a good thing for me.
I know for me, I'll jump in. It feels like I'm in the midst of a setback almost right now, in the process of trying to get credentialed with insurance panels, and starting, our own private practice is a lengthy and complicated process, as so many people had warned me. But I think, what Emma was saying, in being able to, kind of trust your own struggle and do the work yourself, you learn so much. And I think being able to do this process on my own, although it's probably taking me like months longer versus if I would to have just had a credentialing company do it for me, I understand it. And I feel like with that understanding, it allows me to appreciate it a lot more and makes me love my work even more too. So I'm in the mix of, I wish I was done with this already, but I will trust my struggle and maybe how long it's taking.
Anybody else like to chime in on this one? Well, if not, I'm curious too, for all of you, given, all of these, myriad of initiatives, events, businesses that you've started, maintained, volunteered with, worked for, like you hear these things and it just it makes my head spin a little bit. And people talk about work-life balance. Is it such a thing? Is it even desirable? If it's things you're passionate about. But I'm just curious to know. Anyone who wants to chime in, please do. Like, how do you do it all? What is how do you stay sane? How do you stay awake? Where do you find the energy and how do you do it?
I guess I'll chime in real quick because I get this question a lot with my students when I'm trying to motivate them to give back to the community. And sometimes it's those reluctant learners that they don't want to give back, but then all of a sudden they find themselves through giving back and they find their passion and they actually get more from giving to others. You see, their self-esteem, their confidence, you see them on this path where maybe they're finding success there that they wouldn't find in other, areas. So for me, finding the time is just part of who I am. And I enjoy it. It's kind of, it keeps me going every day. And also, I think it's really important to have that, life work, balance. So for me, just out enjoying New Hampshire, I love hiking and I love kayaking and socializing. So I think it's important to have the balance, but also I don't necessarily see it as I need to make time for it. It's just kind of who I am and I enjoy it. So.
I'm probably the last person who should be giving advice about sort of work-life balance. And I'm not the best at having that work-life balance. And part of it is that I love my job. And I think if I didn't, I'd be more prone to like 5 o'clock punch out, but it's like, I really genuinely love and care about what I'm doing, but it is exhausting. And sometimes I'm burned out. And sometimes what's so interesting, I think, about this work and doing advocacy and sort of even tying in that question about setbacks is these like professional setbacks where I'm working with a community or I'm working on a bill or a piece of legislation that's at the State House and it's been a frustrating legislative session. It's like, how do I overcome that part is really kind of challenging. And like Laura, I'm doing a better job spending my weekends doing things like hiking and doing fun things and enjoying the state that I live in and love and making sure that I do that. But I think my biggest piece of advice would be to like put yourself out there and say yes to stuff, but then it's okay to like pull that stuff back. It's okay to pull back and sort of Marie Kondo your own life. And maybe you joined a board and it is not sparking joy. Like it is okay to pull back and not do those things anymore and focus on like the 1 or 2 things that you really love and that you really care about and you're really passionate about, and just trust that the other people out there, like the people who are in this Zoom meeting right now, that those people are going to take care of the other stuff. Like I'm passionate about the environment and I'm passionate about a ton of topics, but I can't commit myself fully to every single topic. So if I take care of the affordable housing crisis, I'm trusting that someone else will take care of the environment thing. And that's why we're better together and we're better as like this big group.
Along those lines, I just want to say, as I'm getting older, be 30 soon, and it's to learn how to say no, to say no to every single thing that, you're being proposed that coming your way. I noticed recently that, whatever Will Stewart leaves someplace, they usually call me and say, hey, do you want to take this place? That happened with the Neighbor Works. That's happening with the MTA. So, hey, Will Stewart is running for office. Do you want to take his position? So I have sometimes to say no, and it's sometimes hard, but, but I think that to me personally, the way I found that balance is know your why. I'm not trying to be philosophical here, but once you know your why, I think that becomes your fuel, that becomes your passion. So it doesn't matter if you're running in 10 directions, as long as you're very efficient with your time. And also, I'm also a young father. I have a 5-year-old, and that's formative years. So whenever I'm spending time with my little one, that's everything else really doesn't matter. It's that guy. And that's the person I'm focusing on. But also when I'm focusing on the other things, I make sure that I'm in there 100%. So I make sure that my employment, but also my passion, my businesses, my entrepreneur ideas are things that I'm truly passionate about. So I don't feel like I'm spreading myself thin or all over the place, right? I feel like I'm actually making an impact, and just kind of finding the true purpose of my life. And I think recently, again, as I'm getting older, mental health is becoming such a big deal for me, at least. I think I'm prioritizing my mental health more than I've ever prioritized it before. Knowing that if I can get enough sleeping time, I know the next day I'll perform much better. If I do, certain, physical activity, working out and just taking care of my body, I know that that's just kind of like, a car putting fuel in your car. So in this case, it's my body. So I think that, once you find your why, and also you just learn to say no to certain things because you get opportunity left and right. You're the next change maker, right? You're the next big deal, and everyone wants a piece of you. Just trying to be sure that you saying no, and sometimes it's difficult because you really wants to be part of that, but you have just to know, you kind of prioritize. And to me, it's family, health, spirituality, but also what I'm passionate about.
I would love to piggyback with one more thing as well. I am absolutely redefining what work-life balance is for me. In addition, amongst the pandemic, we're starting our own business, like I had mentioned, but we also had our first child. So we have an 11-month-old baby. So it's definitely, COVID and this year has definitely, flipped us on our heads in so many wonderful ways. But I think asking for help, I think with all of us, sharing our successes, it's not our successes. It's not ours alone. I think our successes is the success of many other people that were around us, that helped us and supported us, that, we just might happen to be the face of that, but it's not just ours alone. So being able to step back and be like, hey, you know what? I have the drive and the passion to do this, but I need help. And I'm going to ask for that. And I'm going to ask questions and lean on people. And I think, that's what's so great about New Hampshire, is that there's the community to do that. There's the community to lean on other people so that you can be successful, but you're not successful alone.
I don't know if other people on the panel can relate to this, but in my experience, especially through my 20s, there was nothing more motivating than being single in a small town. And I feel like the experiences in New Hampshire outside of Manchester and the Central Corridor is like, I got to meet people, and you got to do things to bring people together and commune people and gather people. And as I've engaged more across the state, I feel like there is so much more to do. But when you're in the smallest city and there's not even a cafe or a place to hang out, that in and of itself, I think creates a lot of energy to just do more, to start projects, businesses, organizations. And I think a lot about when Stay Work Play did that survey about, how many people claim they have X number of friends or claim they have no friends. And there is a loneliness epidemic in New Hampshire. And so often I felt like, well, we got to, do so much more work to make people feel connected and seen and feel like they belong. And that has always felt like, Sarah mentioned loving the work you do. For me, it's always about loving the people that come through your door because of the work you do. That is your work, and that is my, my life. Eventually, hopefully, not single, not in a small town, someone else will have to pass that torch. But that's been very motivating for me.
So we have a question here in the comments. Crystal asks, who has been an unexpected mentor for you? And that's to anybody who would like to respond.
I don't know if it's unexpected necessarily, but I would love to give a plug to my mentor, because New Hampshire Housing has been a supporter of Stay Work Play events and also of the Workforce Housing Coalition. So my mentor is definitely George Regan, and he was probably one of the first people that I met in this housing world in New Hampshire. It's kind of a funny story. I was still in graduate school, and I don't know if he's here today in this event, but I was still in graduate school, and he was speaking about housing. I got roped into this housing talk in the MUB at UNH. And I went, and as it turns out, I was the only person who was there voluntarily. Everyone else who was there because their professor assigned it to them. I was hands down, by far, the oldest person in the room, and the only person who particularly was like really interested in paying attention. And I remember at some point during his presentation, he was talking about life cycle housing, and he made this joke about, like, you know, life cycle housing, you live in an apartment and then you might buy a house and then you want to downsize, and then eventually made a joke about, like, you know, your permanent affordable housing, the graveyard. And I was the only person who laughed. And at the end of the presentation, I was the only person who asked any questions. And I've known George ever since. It was like 4 years ago. And he's been an awesome mentor to me, not just helping me understand the technical and the nitty gritty and the expertise about housing in New Hampshire, but also just like someone who's been someone who I can rant to about the things that are happening and when there are frustrations. And when I'm frustrated about something that's happening, particularly like I already said, it's been a frustrating legislative session. It's just so good to have somebody who gets it, who you can talk to and like confide in, and also ask questions when you're like, wait, I don't understand this thing at all, or this person asked me this question and I have no idea how to respond to it. It's just really good to have. And I've had some great mentors throughout my sort of, you know, career development and my professional development, but George is hands down my mentor right now, and my favorite person that I get to work with.
He is a great guy. Anybody else? Any unexpected or, you know, less unexpected mentors that you'd like to chat about and share?
I'll take a crack at that. So I actually just nominated my unexpected mentor for Rising Star Award this morning, right before this. Yeah, Sarah's waving. So I have a friend who was my kickboxing coach, and we didn't really know each other that well before the pandemic. You know, I saw her twice a week. She would kick my butt and, you know, just go home and on from there. But with the pandemic, she's a COVID nurse, and she's the only nurse running the monoclonal antibody clinic out of Portsmouth Regional Hospital. And she stays positive, and I have no idea how she does it, but just being around her has made me a better person, because she's working, you know, with COVID 5 days a week, 14-hour shifts, things like that, and just surrounded by all of this awfulness. And she stays happy. And I don't know if she's hardwired that way, but she makes me happy. And, you know, on her rare days off, we'll go hike, and we're doing the whole 52 with the view hiking, which mental health wise has been absolutely wonderful for me during the pandemic, because I'm unemployed right now and all of my volunteer gigs got canceled. So I've been sitting home pretty much learning how to bake everything in any cookbook anywhere. But yeah, she's totally been a mentor for me. She's, you know, she keeps me positive. If I'm having a down day, I talk to her, and, you know, I can't have a down day when she goes what she goes through. So yeah, totally taking this opportunity to plug the Rising Star Awards. I thought she was a great nomination for that, so I sent it in. So people should do that too.
Appreciate the plug. Anybody else, mentors?
I can tell a quick story here, kind of in the realm of it being unexpected, or actually probably more in the realm of it being not wanted from the person that ended up being my mentor. So my senior year spring at UMass, I studied sport management and ended up doing an independent study to create the business that ended up becoming the ECAL Activity Center on Lake Winnipesaukee. And being right out of school and building this business, wanted to do it in Meredith, grew up spending my summers on Winnipesaukee and Meredith. And you had the hotel there in Meredith. And the guy that started the hotel, pretty much turned the town around. His name is Rusty McLear. Reached out to him and kind of pitched him as I was going to do this water sports boat charter business, and I'd like to take his hotel guests out if he would be so inclined. And after the first summer, it went really well. And you'd read all those books about find a mentor. So I was in a conversation with him. I'm like, hey, would you be my mentor? And he's like, hell no. Not a chance. There's nothing you can learn from me. So I was like, oh, like tail between my legs, like, that kind of stinks. But over the course of a decade, ended up going into business with him and learned a hell of a lot. And to this day, he is still not my mentor, but at least as much as he knows it. So sometimes the person doesn't officially have to be it. And I know sometimes you read things that, go out there and find a partner or, have a specific label on something, but you can learn a lot from a lot of people. And I've learned a lot from him. And I think that probably one person that's taught me the most in my experience since graduating school and starting businesses has been him. So.
For me, it's been a man named Peter Cook. Some of you may know him, some of you may not, but we, back in 2015, I volunteered for Welcoming Manchester that I mentioned earlier. And he was my co-chair for the economic development and employment. And I really told him, Peter, I get nervous whenever I'm running meetings because we're co-chairs. And he taught me anything from being a facilitator to write an email, to negotiate your salary, to negotiate your contract. And he basically taught me everything about American business culture that I know today. So if I ever respond to your email in 24 hours, that thanks to Peter, because, it's the small things like that coming from Congo, where I came here when I was 20 and I had no previous working experience. So just kind of have him taking me under his wing, but also just, making phone calls. Like the guy, there's nothing he wouldn't do. But the most important is that he has a passion to just help people of color and immigrants. And just him being 75, old white male, maybe in the upper class, and me being a 20-something person of color, and just kind of have that connection. Now he's my son's godfather. And, I go to his house and we have this, it's have evolved beyond just like, being a mentor. He's now like a spiritual guide, and he's like a father figure to me. And he gave it to me straight. I know Peter will give it to me straight. I sometimes don't like to hear it, but he'll definitely tell me. And I'm like, sometimes you remind me of my dad, and I don't like that, because he will tell me the honest truth, but he'll do it in such a gentle, kind way that you're still gonna get the feedback and you're still gonna learn. We have this method of did well, do better. So if we have, if something happened, you say, hey, what did you do well? And what did you do well, and what can you do better? So I know what I did well and actually what I do better. And honestly, it has raised standard on how, I approach my employees, but also how I get approached as an employee for, other organizations, because, I know what true leadership looks like from just Peter Cook. And he had a lot of experience. He's retired, but he had a lot of experience working for corporate. He was the general manager for Procter & Gamble back in the 90s. So, he'll just teach me all these small tricks on how to talk to your supervisor, how to talk to people. And if you ever hear me saying a 50-cent word or 25-cent word, I probably stole it from Peter. So, he'll say, hey, if you said this word, you're probably gonna look smart. And I'll write it down, and I'll make sure whenever I get a first chance, I'll definitely throw out that word. And that's just the relationship that we've had. But I also want to say I have other mentors for different things. Will Alette, some of you may know him. He's an activist. He was a former NAACP president. And being an immigrant coming in this country, there is a long history of Black people in this country. And coming here in 2012, I don't know a lot. I don't know much, especially given the fact that I went to school in Uganda. So I never really learned the American history, although I'm learning now. And Willard is an African-American, and always tell me the perspective from an African-American man who's in his 60s, and just kind of give me the perspective. So I'm learning what it is like to be a Black man in America, although, I spent 20 years of my life in Congo. So those are just a few ones that come to mind, but I have a tribe of mentors. I'm not shy to approach someone and say, hey, I'd really love you to be my mentor. And if they say yes, that's great. If they say no, I totally understand. But 10 out of 10, they're usually saying yes. And actually, Peter said that people like to be mentors. So if you ever really want to have somebody who's your mentor, just go approach them. People like to give advice. So take advantage of that.
Very well said. And like you said, if you don't ask, you don't get. And as Scott, told us, you can ask and not get, but still kind of get in the end. So it's many routes to get there. Had one question that was texted to me specifically for you, George. He asked somebody who had been with us earlier in the week when we heard from a cohort of young elected local leaders. And one of those was your colleague, Mike Giacomo, counselor there on the city council. And so this person wanted to know, they said, what is it like in Keene, having yourself, kind of the head of city government. And then as Mike was telling us, kind of a cohort of younger city councilors that make a significant portion of the council. How has that been, for Keene to have, such a high concentration of young people in city government?
I wouldn't say it's been easy. When I started out, I was the youngest city councilor by 15 years when I first started doing this. And there weren't any other young people involved in the city government. That's changed a lot in the last 6 or 7 years. Now we have, for the longest time, we had 2 women on a 15-member council. Now we have 5, and we have about 6 or 7. Actually, yeah, we just had someone come on, and so I think we have like 6 or 7 under 40, which is pretty amazing shift in a short period of time. And it's definitely made. I think there have been a lot of positive things about it, but there are some painful things that happen when you have big shifts like that. You have sort of the old guard and the new guard butt heads on a lot of things for no other reason than they just sort of don't get along real well. But we work through that, and local government is good because everybody that's there is just really, at the end of the day, even though they might argue and disagree, they're there because they care about the community. One thing I would say, and it sort of jumps off of what was talked about with the mentor conversation, is you need to really be conscious about asking people to participate. And before I was mayor, a person who was like a mentor for me was a previous mayor, Mayor Dale Prejean. He just recently passed away, unfortunately, but super nice guy, did a lot for the city of Keene. And he used to hold court down at the local coffee shop here. And he was the first person who even mentioned to me about running for mayor. And he said, George, you ever think about running for mayor? And before I could even answer, he just said, I'll support you. And that like kind of put the idea in my head. But I remember Dale for that because I go out of my way to ask people to participate in local government. And I know that it has made a difference because we've had a lot of young people run for office and be successful. We have a really good track record now of like younger people winning these seats. And that also extends out to the hundreds of volunteer positions that I'm appointing all the time. And another thing that I did was to try and formalize the process for getting people that the mayor goes through to nominate people to the local boards and commissions, whether it's the planning board, zoning board, all the advisory committees and commissions. Before, and when I stepped into the role, it was all just like the mayor would grab whoever he knew or whoever approached him or whatever. And that wasn't really getting a good cross section of the community. And so we've just like a lot of nonprofit boards that I'm sure many people serve on and understand how that works. We put together a matrix to make sure that we're hitting all of the different areas of the community, whether it be age, ethnicity, all kinds of things. And gender has been a big one. I mean, the number of women represented in some of these positions was just very, very low. And so I've made a point in my time as mayor to really try and correct that a little bit. We still have a long way to go, but it's making a big difference. I feel like we have a much better representation of the community that are making these decisions.
That is great to hear. We have a couple more minutes. I don't know. I don't see any more questions in the chat. If anyone would like to ask anything, now is the time. A lot of great conversation. Let's see. All right. Okay. Well, we can. It is a good time to wrap up, I suppose. These were great conversations. So thank you again to all of our past Rising Stars Awards winners for joining us here this afternoon and sharing what they've been up to. Certainly, like I said, very impressive. And it was also good to hear some of the stories of some of the challenges and how things don't always turn out as we expect or plan, but the other opportunities can be opened up because of that too. And life is funny that way. I will say that we do have Rising Stars for 2021. Those nominations are currently open right now. So if you would like to join this cohort of impressive people or know somebody who would like to join them, I should say, we would very much encourage you to nominate them for awards. As was mentioned in the chat earlier, we do have a new category this year, COVID-19 Crusader, in addition to some of our returning categories like Young Person of the Year, Young Civic Leader of the Year, Young Entrepreneur of the Year, College Student of the Year, and so forth. So, one of my colleagues will throw the link down there in the chat where you can learn more about all the awards and the nomination process. I would also, for those of you who are on the call on the event Wednesday, you may have heard from our speakers, Grace and Adizi, with New Hampshire for Anti-Racist Education. We're teaming up with the two of them to host a program we're calling Anti-Racist Action, a Continuous Transformation. And it's a 4-part series to help build your understanding of what it means to be anti-racist and how to take intentional action for sustainable change within all of our communities. So that's going to be taking place on Thursday, May 13th, May 27th, June 10th, and June 24th from 6:30 to 7:30, each of those Thursday evenings. And participation is going to be intentionally limited for that because we want to make sure that we have a safe space for open and honest conversation and learning. So we ask that for those folks who do want to sign up, that you're willing to take part in all 4 evenings. Due to that limited capacity. So we'll be sure and throw a link in the chat for that as well. So with that, would like to thank everybody for taking part in today's conversation. I know a number of you have been with us every single day this week, and it is very much appreciated. I hope that on behalf of the entire Stay Work Play team, including my colleague Sarah Davis, who really put all of this together, and a huge shout out to her for doing such a great job. But it definitely hope it was worth everyone's time and attention, both today and all week. So please keep an eye on your inbox. We'll be following up probably early next week with recaps. We'll have recordings of all of these sessions in case there were some you didn't get to see live. We'll also have a survey for you and maybe some other good stuff too. So keep an eye on your inbox, keep an eye on social media for upcoming Stay Work Play events. And with that, have a great day.